What's up, everyone? Doug Polk here, and the podcast is back. Got another exciting guest for you lined up today. Should be a good one today. Today, I'm introducing to you a man known for his
What's up, everyone?
outspoken.
Doug Polk
Oh, I'm
here,
hearing it in
and
the
the
background.
podcast is back. Got another
No sweat. Anyway, back to business here. We're joined by a man known for his tweets. Definitely willing to get into the mix. I'm going to introduce to you guys Kevin Pham. Welcome to the podcast, Kevin.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's just jump into it. Normally I like to kick off the pod and ask the guests an easy question, right? So my question to you is going to be: is Ethereum a security?
Based on my read, there was an initial offering of a financial investment done by a common entity, the Ethereum Foundation, and there was an expectation of profit. And basically what happened was that, in contrast to how Bitcoin was just launched just by releasing the software. You would just download the software and just start mining, and that's how the Bitcoin was distributed. Whereas Ethereum, it was the original ICO. And these are not my words. This is Vitalik Buterin's words, that I launched Ethereum itself with an ICO, which, by the way, directly contradicts, I believe, Coinbase's chief of risk and compliance or legal or whatever, who said that Coinbase does not list any ICOs, whereas Vitalik Buterin, the creator of Ethereum, called it an ICO. And a lot of people, I guess, called me out for calling that out. And they're saying, oh, that's not very cypherpunk to, get the state involved, let's handle this, in-house and whatnot. But I guess my issue was that cryptocurrency is all about censorship resistance. Let's establish this real quick, because I think a lot of people are confused and they're using the wrong analogies and the wrong metaphors. So basically what I see is that a lot of people do not know how to think from first principles, and they use different mental models, or they copy existing things and try to apply it onto something that they don't understand. So every time there is a revolutionary idea or technology, for example, there's an app for this, there's an app for that, there's an Uber for this, there's an Uber for that, there's a photo sharing app for this. Every time there is a breakthrough technology, there's all these lemmings and all these copiers that don't understand what made it special. And basically, with all these cryptocurrencies, and they do not understand what makes Bitcoin special. So let me just establish that first principle. So the reason why Bitcoin has value is because it is censorship resistant. No one entity can roll back or censor transactions or arbitrarily change the protocol. And the reason why is because it is decentralized and distributed across multiple nodes, multiple computers. And in order for a change to be implemented, every node in the network has to agree for it to be updated. And that is why Bitcoin has value, that no one person can control it. And what's happening is that these people that don't understand it, they're using this centralized startup, Silicon Valley startup mental model to where they look for a founder, they look for a strong team, and they look for a centralized entity, a nonprofit or a corporation that they can either invest in or just have things buttoned up legally. And Ethereum had a legal entity that can be attacked legally. They had a figurehead and a founder in Vitalik Buterin that can be socially attacked, trolled, if you like. And all those things reduces Ethereum censorship resistance. So actually what happened when Ethereum, by doing an ICO, placed themselves within the jurisdiction of the SEC, what happened was that in order to protect itself, it had to play ball with the state. Andreessen Horowitz, Unisquare Ventures, they had a closed door meeting with the SEC to talk about how Ethereum is not a security and how it's decentralized. And then later, there's, an SEC, representative gives a statement that, we think Ethereum is sufficiently decentralized and something can turn from a security into commodity or whatever. It was just a completely nonsensical answer. But the problem is that what happened there was that it was crony capitalism. It was a, private, profit-seeking entity lobbying the state to protect a cryptocurrency, to where they're using the state to protect a cryptocurrency, when in reality, a cryptocurrency is supposed to protect itself from the state through decentralization. So it's a very dangerous precedent to set, to where this is going to be a state-sanctioned cryptocurrency. It goes against the whole ethos of cryptocurrency, crypto anarchy, and yeah, the whole cryptocurrency movement. Cryptocurrency is about disintermediating the state from money.
So a lot to tackle there. I want to start off with something that you said that I think I disagree with, which is that the value of cryptocurrency is that it is censorship resistant. And I actually think that that is one of the best aspects to Bitcoin specifically. And it's an aspect to what gives it value, but that's not what actually gives it. That's not a requirement for a cryptocurrency to have value. The requirement is that there are people who are willing to buy it. If there's not anyone that will buy, it doesn't have value. It doesn't really matter if they're censorship resistant or not. So I think a lot of the altcoins, a good number of them are not censorship resistant. And so you can't say they're worth nothing because there is a market. So what are your thoughts on that as far as defining the value?
Well, the market could be inefficient for a very long time. A bunch of .coms that had zero value had value for a long time. So yeah, you can say empirically right now they have value, but if you're looking at where the market is trending, that's not going to be the case for very long. Because for example, let's just go down the list of shitcoins here, and basically the mental model that you use is this cryptocurrency resilience against attack, legal attack, state attack, social attack. All right. So Ethereum, there is empirical evidence. I don't know why everybody is trying to claim that I'm a conspiracy theorist or I'm an alarmist, whatever. There's empirical evidence that somebody released when I think Ethereum was close to flipping Bitcoin. Somebody released a rumor that Vitalik died in a car accident and the price plummeted. Okay. I
saw that, yeah.
Yeah, so that is not a censorship. Well, it is kind of censorship resistant. A human being can be censored. It's kind of dark, but
there are many.
So the thing that reduces that censorship resistance is centralization with Vitalik Buterin. So basically, people are used to looking at a figurehead and ascribing a value to an entity, to a certain leader, whether it's the president of the United States, CEO, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk. And that is the centralized model that people are used to. So Ethereum is very familiar to people, to where there's a figurehead. And basically, based on Vitalik's tweets and his behavior, the price will go up and down. So there's empirical evidence that the price of Ethereum followed the health of Vitalik Buterin. I'm just going off what the market told me. So that is the first thing. The second way that Ethereum could have got censored is that if the SEC said, Ethereum Foundation, you are the organization that did illegal security and went after them, then and also said that every exchange, you are listing illegal security, you need to take it off or we're going to go after you, right? So that is an opportunity for the SEC to censor Ethereum because they have a leader, because they have a legal entity. Bitcoin doesn't have a leader to go after. Bitcoin doesn't have a legal entity to go after, right? So then that is why Bitcoin empirically has more value and Ethereum is crashing and all the shitcoins are crashing because they're trivial to censor and attack.
I think also, if you look at, I completely agree with that point. If you look at almost any of these other currencies, they almost all have a leading guy, and what that guy says can certainly manipulate or shape the price. I always think of the best example of that being Justin Sun announcing that an announcement is coming, and then the price goes all over the place. So absolutely,
you know where Justin Sun worked
I also think that
he
it's
learned that from Ripple.
What's up?
He worked at Ripple. That's where he learned it from.
The experts of marketing, the masters of marketing. But I also think that that's sort of necessary for a lot of these currencies because there's this first mover advantage that Bitcoin has in terms of how it's just already integrated into so many different aspects. And you know, you think cryptocurrency, Bitcoin's first. If you're gonna accept money, you're gonna accept cryptocurrency as money, Bitcoin's first. Bitcoin has this massive advantage. And it's as a store of value. It's the real only true store of value when you look at cryptocurrency. And so I think for a lot of these other currencies, if they want to be successful, they sort of have to have a guide because in order they need something to kind of make up for that disadvantage, which is how much larger Bitcoin is relative to them at the start. They need to have someone kind of spearheading the project in order to succeed.
Okay, so what happens when that guy disappears?
Well, I'm not arguing it's a good thing. I'm just saying this is what happens. I'm not taking the position on whether there should be a guy or not. That's just what I'm saying happens in this market. This is why the next like 10 coins are as successful as they are, because there was someone that managed to put together a project, raise a bunch of money, make all these things happen. That's just the reality of the situation.
Yeah, so they're basically capitalizing off people's ignorance because when you see me troll Vitalik or any other leader, that is a vulnerability. So I'll tell you this. The minute that Vitalik leaves the project, Ethereum is going to zero. Because basically what these shitcoins are doing is that they're trying to resemble a corporation or a startup that is familiar to people, but it's a completely wrong model. Do you know who Dan Larimer is?
It sounds familiar, but no, I don't know.
Yeah, he's the founder of EOS, and he's also founder of Steam, and he's also founder of BitShares. So he jumps from project to project to project. And every time he leaves, people follow him, people don't follow the project. So you have to change your mental model. These are not startups, these are not companies, these are currencies. And as a currency, what a currency does is it allows strangers to transfer value and to trade. And in order for that currency to be robust, it has to be as unpolitical and impersonal as possible. And with all these cryptocurrencies, with a figurehead or a company or an organization controlling it, it's highly political. And there is no benefit of a centralized cryptocurrency compared to centralized fiat. That's the only reason why Bitcoin has value. Bitcoin has value because no one entity can control it. So basically, all these people are scamming Ethereum.
I don't agree with you. And by the way, I'm generally more pro Bitcoin. In terms of the way that I approach things, Bitcoin's always my largest hold. Big believer in Bitcoin. I like Bitcoin more than anything else out there. But I just don't believe with you that the reason that it has value is because of that specific thing. The reason it has value is because of all of the properties of it and the fact that there are people that will buy it. If there's no market, it has no value. And so I think that one of the things that the Bitcoin maximalists I disagree with when we look at a lot of these altcoins is that, you know, they have this idea of Bitcoin in a very idealistic way. They have a very idealistic sense of what cryptocurrency should be. And Bitcoin fulfills all those properties. But that does not mean that there aren't other use cases for cryptocurrency. And I think this is really where you see the divergence between a lot of Bitcoin maximalists and many people that like other altcoins is that there can exist and there will coexist other cryptocurrencies. And just because they don't fulfill that store of value or that immutability, that doesn't make them not valuable. It's based around a market. That market will fluctuate based on buying and selling, and eventually it will decide. But that doesn't mean that they can't have value. Do you think altcoins can have value?
Well, they empirically do, but my take is that the only use case of altcoins is to trade and get more Bitcoin.
Well, many Bitcoin. Would you call yourself a Bitcoin maximalist? It's probably fair to say that.
I call myself a realist.
All right, but you know, in terms of your approach.
Well, so then actually Vitalik came up with that term, that epithet to call out skeptics of his project. And yeah, he's the one who came to the term, and then we actually co-opted it and repurposed it for our own end. So I think Johnny Dilly at Memple, good guy. He was at Blockchain. He called out Ethereum from the beginning, and he was right. He was right. And Vitalik came up with that term to insult Bitcoin maximalists, to think that they're religious or they're just trying to protect their own interests or not. Whereas Bitcoins are just mainly they're just mainly skeptics. So I actually So here's the thing: everybody thinks I'm just like a religious Bitcoin maximalist, but I actually invested in Ethereum at their illegal security offering. I think they're like, it was 1 Bitcoin for 2000 ETH, and I think Bitcoin was around $600 at that time. So yeah, I got about 2000 ETH for like $600, and then I fell into the kind of Vitalik cult. It's like, I have no idea what this guy's saying, but he sounds smart, and that's kind of like the pattern matching thing that Silicon Valley does. It's just like, oh, this is just like a genius programmer, like next Mark Zuckerberg. Oh yeah, I'm just gonna throw a flyer, throw some money at it. And the first thing that happened, their first project, the DAO. Do you know what the DAO is?
Yeah, I remember. I can't explain exactly, but I remember what happened. This is what caused the Ethereum Classic fork. By the way, just to be clear here, I don't in any way claim to be some kind of cryptocurrency expert. I talk with a lot of guests. I like to bring sort of like new people into the space. I've been invested for a while, but I'm not claiming to know a bunch of stuff and know all of the people and know every event that happens. So I just want my viewers to know that I've always been straightforward with these guys. Anyway, carry on.
Sure. So yeah, so let me give you a little bit of Ethereum History 101. So basically, they use this smart contract technology to create what's called a decentralized autonomous organization. And specifically, what that was they pooled a bunch of money, pooled a bunch of ETH together into kind of like a decentralized venture capital fund, where they would vote on investing in projects that would increase the value of ETH. And which was also called a legal security by the SEC, but I guess they didn't choose to do any type of enforcement action. And what happened was that Vitalik vouched for it. He invested in it. All the top people in Ethereum invested it. And immediately what happened was that there was a bug in the code and somebody hacked it and sold a bunch of ETH. And what immediately happened was that Vitalik came to the rescue, and he told every exchange to stop trading, and they listened to him. And then he led the bailout. So basically, a bunch of people lost a bunch of money to the hacker. And whereas in Bitcoin, we had the Mt. Gox hack, the Bitstamp hack, the Bitfinex hack. If you fuck up, it's done. It's this. Bitcoin is immutable. There's no do-overs. This is not the banking system, right? It's not 2008. And basically, what they did was that they forked it and they rolled back the transaction to give everybody back their money. And from there, I dumped almost all my ETH because it went against the whole purpose of why Bitcoin exists. Is that Bitcoin exists because it's immutable and you can't roll back transactions like with the banking system. And basically what Ethereum did was they just engaged in more crony behavior and and privileged insiders. And it's just like the banking system. And ETH should have either died or it would have got stronger if they just let it happen, because okay, this is a decentralized protocol, code is law, whatever action you take is immutable and it's set. And that's why cryptocurrency has value. By doing that, it just became a different version of the banking system where you can just arbitrarily do a political rollback. So I guess long story short is that, okay, if one person or one entity can arbitrarily change transactions or undo things, how's that different than centralized banking? What's the value there?
No, I totally agree. And actually, I remember when this happened, I actually purchased a lot of Ethereum Classic because it's the original chain. And I believe that if these kinds of hacks happen, like that's the price you pay. It's like this is how the network becomes stronger, and code should be law. I didn't like that. I think that was probably a poor decision. My only counter argument to that would be if all of this money is lost from these people that have invested, then the overall amount of people using the chain can decrease. They might not be involved in the project anymore, and the overall the economic incentives for the community might hurt Ethereum moving forward, because this hacker now has such a large portion of the supply. That could have a severe economic impact on the price of Ethereum, as well as this money that everyone had invested. And I think at least my understanding is that they were trying to protect these people, which again, if you're looking at it from like a purity standpoint, something like Bitcoin, that shouldn't happen. If money is supposed to be store of value, it can't happen because it's bad for it. However, if you're trying to have, you're trying to develop this decentralized platform for applications, and you're trying to look out for the people that invested with you, then maybe that's less important. Again, wouldn't have been my decision, but at least that's my understanding of why that decision was made.
Okay, three things. So Bitcoin was created because our government or the Federal Reserve or the banking system made that same argument that we need to, bail out these banks for fucking up in order to serve the social good. It's the same argument, and it's also the reason why Bitcoin was created, because that creates a moral hazard to where if you fuck up, you should fail or you should get hurt. If you're actually hurting the system to where when you make mistakes and you bail out those same people. Why didn't we make the same argument with the Mt. Gox and the Bitstamp and the Bitfinex hack, right? So a hacker stole a bunch of, Mt. Gox coins or Bitstamp or Bitfinex coins. You could say that, oh, this is going to hurt the ecosystem because a hacker has, a lot of Bitcoin and a lot of good people don't, right? That's the same argument. But in reality, this is what I say is everybody that invested in Ethereum was an idiot and they should have got kicked out of the system, and the hacker is smart. And you want the hacker to be, you want to enfranchise the hack. You want the hacker to be involved because that person is also obviously very clever. And that person is probably adversarial minded. So that person would increase the security of the system. But what happened was that you had these leaders, these political elites in Ethereum that disenfranchised one individual for being smart, for finding a bug in the code, and they censored him and they disenfranchised him and took his money back to give it to the people that launched this this clusterfuck of a idea.
It's at least controversial, but let's take a step back here. So what's your personal stance with what you invest in when it comes to crypto? Are you all Bitcoin? Do you believe are there any altcoins you particularly like? What's your strategy as far as which ones you choose to invest in?
Yeah, so I have crypto non-starters, crypto investment non-starters, to where I can just from the get-go, I can write things off. So I don't invest anything with a public founder, and I don't invest anything controlled by a centralized legal entity. So that pretty much disqualifies the majority of cryptocurrencies, or shitcoins as I call it. So my holdings right now are mainly, of course, Bitcoin. I hold a little bit of Bitcoin Cash from the fork, and I hold a little bit of Monero, which doesn't have a public founder. He has an anonymous founder. So that person cannot exit scam.
The word founder is probably not correct, but Bitcoin Cash certainly has a figurehead that plays a large role in the network.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wanted to bring that up. I'm actually conflicted with that. So there's a thesis. It's kind of controversial, but to me, it's logical. It's called the hold all forks thesis, to where that the conservative move is to hold all Bitcoin forks because you don't know exactly which one is going to win in the long term. And the value of Bitcoin is the sum of all the forks. I understand that theoretically, but I think in practice, most of these forks are basically shitcoins as well. And I think in practice, Bitcoin Cash is extremely centralized. I mean, what happens, if Jihan Wu drops dead tomorrow, or Bitmain gets seized by Chinese government, or there's sanctions put against them against the American government or something like that, right? So yeah, I think to be logically consistent, that Bitcoin Cash is highly centralized as well. If anything happens to Jihan Wu or Bitmain, or feds go after Roger Ver for something, or Australian authorities go after Craig Wright, then yeah, they're going to be extremely hampered. So yeah, so that's the mental model that you have to say. It's like, how many failure modes are there? if one person gets removed or one company gets removed, what is the company going to look like, right? So you look at Ethereum, like, all right, so I have empirical evidence that there's the rumor about Vitalik, that he died and then the price crashed, and then he proved that he was live and then brought it back up. What happens to XRP if Ripple, the SEC goes after Ripple, right? What happens to EOS if Dan Larimer leaves again, or the EOS Corporation, the SEC goes after them? What happens to Stellar if Jed McCaleb and the Stellar Org Foundation, something happens to them? Litecoin, right? Charlie Lee sold at the top, and it's been it's been dropping from the top 10. And here's the thing: it's like Charlie Lee, he's stuck in like a rock and a hard place. Like if he leaves, he's an exit scammer. If he stays, then Ethereum or Litecoin remains centralized, right? His tweets literally can move the price, right? So the thing that people don't understand is that Satoshi leaving the project was one of the critical factors of Bitcoin being successful, because the CIA, the government, they would have went after Satoshi if he was public. They went after Gavin Andresen, who was kind of the Vitalik of Bitcoin at the time, and Satoshi handed over the project to him. So the thing is that it's about decentralization and minimizing your single points of failure, right? So public leader, central organization. And, you could say that, Zcash is better tech than Monero or whatever, but there's just so much centralization there. There's, Zuku, Wilcox, he's, the founder, and basically everybody's investing because, they think he's, he's probably is, a privacy genius, but, well, if you are really a privacy genius, how come you can't make yourself private? But also there's a Zcash, corporation, what happens if that entity fails, right? So those are it's a different mindset. It's like a defensive mindset, right? It's like, how many legs can be taken out of this thing, and can it still stand?
Well, okay. So first off, I like most of the ones that you've listed there. To talk about the Charlie Lee thing for a moment, we actually had him on the podcast here, and we talked about that. And at least what the takeaway that I had from talking with Charlie was that a lot of people were really unhappy with sort of the power that he had on moving Litecoin's price. And so by being so actively invested in it and being able to change it like that, there are a lot of people that are accusing him of abusing his power or just attacking him in general, or who were basically really angry about what he had to say. So his take on it was that he wanted to take a step back and not really have a financial incentive for it to succeed, but rather wanting it to succeed because he's the founder of the project. Like it's like his baby. He wants to see this succeed. Now, I think that he should probably have held some personal opinion of mine, but I do understand where he's coming from, in that it's kind of tough as somebody in the crypto space when you have a lot of sway, because something that you say can impact prices very directly. If you say, for example, if Vitalik tweeted right now, about to spend the next 4 weeks straight developing this new thing for Ethereum that's going to change the game, Ethereum's price would go up like whatever right now. So it's tough for people because they have to balance that immediate power that they have on the price in conjunction with their own personal, financial well-being. And we see all kinds of strategies. We see some people that really try to exploit that for maximum gain. We see some people that try to take the high road. I'm sure that's at least in Charlie's mind, that's what he's trying to do here, is take the high road. So, it's tough because it's one of those spots where it's kind of hard for you to win. Well, what's your stance on what's the right way for someone in let's say Charlie's shoes? What's the right way for him to go about it?
So the right way to go about it is to leave the project as soon as possible. The longer you wait, the less likely that you can successfully exit. So here's an interesting thing. So then the founder of Dogecoin, Jackson Palmer, I actually know him personally.
He does YouTube stuff, by the way, guys. If you ever want to learn from Jackson Palmer, probably the smartest guy on YouTube, I think.
And what was a smart move? Not making money off of Dogecoin and leaving the project. Because I think Dogecoin was started out as a joke. Litecoin is basically a Control-C, Control-V coin. It wasn't serious, but Jackson had the foresight to, I guess, understand. Well, first, I think he's just an honest person that said this was a joke. I'm not going to make money off this. This doesn't feel right. Whereas Charlie, he went balls to the wall, got hired at Coinbase, got Brian Armstrong to list it, and then bounced, leaving him holding the reputational or legal liability that Litecoin is, because those tweets pumped the price a lot. I remember, I believe the price pumped before that announcement as well. So yeah, Charlie went balls to the wall and tried to make as much money as possible. So then after he got it listed on Coinbase, which really put Litecoin on the map or established it, he left. And here's an interesting question: how can you leave crypto's like top unicorn? As an early employee, you probably get what, a 9-figure payday, 8-figure payday at least, right?
I'm not going to speculate, dude. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be like, ooh, maybe. Like, I don't know.
Well, no, there's something nice with it. But so the question is like, how can you leave, right? You see people leaving Facebook or Google or Uber or whatever, right? It's because there's a conflict of interest there. Is that you can get liquid off of crypto, and you don't have to, be a fiduciary for the equity of the company.
I'm sure
that's a conflict of interest that a lot of people, I don't know why nobody talks about it. So like Fred Ursum, he was a big Ethereum bull, and he was the co-founder of Bitcoin. He probably has as much equity as Brian, and he was able to walk away. It's like, well, how were you able to walk away? It's like, did he have a bunch of ETH, right? And then but the question is there a conflict of interest between what's right for Coinbase the company and doing what's right for your personal portfolio, right?
Well, there's obviously a conflict of interest there.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about that.
Because if these things are legal liability, reputational liability, you're not doing what's in the best interest of the company. I don't know if you were around during the whole fork wars.
Let me actually hold on before we change, because we were covering a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
Just to talk about the Charlie thing specifically, he did leave Coinbase, but he's spent the majority of his time continuing to help Litecoin, to talk about Litecoin, to sort of really try to help Litecoin succeed. So even and now apparently he doesn't own any. I see no reason why he would lie about that. There's at least some level of honor in doing that. I don't like the word bounced, because while he left Coinbase, he didn't leave the space. He wasn't like, peace bitches, I got your money, now I'm leaving. You know what I'm saying? He has continued to work in the space.
Yeah. So my thing is that they're being short-sighted. It's like, being like a helicopter parent, right? You can baby your child or whatever, or you can let them free and allow them to learn on their own and to be an adult, right? So the thing with Vitalik and Charlie, they're not willing to leave, and with that, you're not giving the community the opportunity to take over the project and allow it to decentralize. Dogecoin wasn't a success. It was a mild success, but actually Jackson Palmer left, and you know what happened? The community took it over and put their own values on it. They were supposed to be the nice, funny, memey crypto or whatever. They were the nice cryptocurrency before Ethereum pivoted to that, when they weren't, code is law anymore. So same thing with Satoshi, right? Satoshi had the foresight to say that he internalized decentralization so much that he says, I am a risk to my own project. So he left it and allowed the community to take it over, to where no one person could be attacked in order to kill the project. So that's why Bitcoin is successful, or that's why Monero is somewhat successful. There's also another cryptocurrency started by another anonymous founder that just released the code, released the white paper, and disappeared, and allowed the community to take it over. And the cool thing with that is that you can get a really strong signal to where you're not basing your assessment off of the qualifications of the founder or whatever. It's like, oh, this guy's a cryptography genius, or this guy's a mathematician, or whatever. All you can do is you just look at the code, and then if the code makes sense, then great. If it doesn't, then no. So it's the strong signal. It's like either it works or it doesn't. Whereas what happens is that when there's all these founders, the cryptocurrency becomes beholden to a cult of personality. You know, people think like Vitalik's like this like genius savant or something, and I'm just a very simple guy, and I'm just like, you know, do your predictions come true? Do you do what you say? Do you say what you do, and do you do what you say? And he says that Ethereum was going to do all this, all that, and it constantly breaks, it constantly gets hacked, and constantly fail. So I just had an intuition that this guy's not that smart, and I would just, you know, I didn't fall for the Kool-Aid. I would just call him out on Twitter, and yeah, he just like his emotional and just kind of understanding of human nature is just severely lacking. And basically, what people do is that they don't do diligence. They just like Vitalik's smart, and I don't understand what he says, but he's just smart, so I'm gonna buy.
Can you expand on what you mean by it's constantly hacked?
They're smart contracts. There is like a big hack like every 6 months. So there was the DAO hack, there was the parity hack, and the interesting thing is that these things are created by the founders of Ethereum. If the people that created, who wrote the code of Ethereum, can't even create a secure, you know, multi-sig or a secure smart contract, then who can, right?
But that wasn't that problem wasn't from Ethereum though. That was because people trying to use the platform did it incorrectly. They wrote their smart contracts incorrectly, not because of a hole in the Ethereum platform, right?
That's what Ethereum is. Ethereum is a smart contract platform. It's just highly insecure. And the thing with that is that it's the transactions are written to the blockchain, right? So the thing is like a Mt. Gox or a Bitstamp, that is an application on top of Bitcoin. Whereas these are transactions that are happening within the blockchain. So then every time there's a hack, you have to undo it by forking the entire blockchain, and you have to take the entire ecosystem with you. So it's just completely flawed design. You don't want that level of complexity on the base protocol level.
So I'm not a developer, obviously, but my understanding with those hacks was that the smart contracts that were written were not done correctly, and thus had exploitability. But that's not Ethereum's fault. That's the smart contracts that were written by these people. I think they're separate. I think that at least that's my understanding. I guess I could be wrong, but I'm fairly certain I'm right here.
I disagree. I just.
So you think that there was bugs in Ethereum's code itself that people exploited?
No, it's just Ethereum's code is highly susceptible to bugs.
Okay, that's different though. That's different than saying that it got hacked. Like you see what I'm saying, right? Like it's different to say it's susceptible to bugs, and that people using Ethereum.
So when I say it got hacked, what I'm saying is that these hacks remain within the blockchain.
I don't know what that means. Can you maybe expand a little bit more? Because like I honestly would like to hear your. I don't really understand what that means.
All right. So the thing with a centralized exchange is that a lot of the transactions, they happen off chain within the database of the exchange, right? And based on weaknesses in that own implementation that is separate from the Bitcoin blockchain, you know, they can get hacked or whatnot. But there's nothing wrong with the actual Bitcoin blockchain and its code. Whereas Ethereum, the applications live on the blockchain. They're not applications on top of the blockchain. So all the transactions are written to the code, or written to the blockchain. So every time there's a hack and you want to try to undo the hack, you can't just edit the code. You have to roll back the entire blockchain. So it's not exact language, but when I say Ethereum gets hacked, it's that it happens on the base protocol level.
Okay, so I guess my understanding was that it was happening. Okay, I see what you're saying. I guess like it's probably better to move on because I don't really have enough technical expertise to describe this correctly. But there's no doubt that there have been many bugs and problems with Ethereum along the way. So that I understand. Do you think there's any value in having a decentralized platform for applications, or do you think that these are all just, I mean, whatever words you'd like to use to describe them?
All right, so here's another simple heuristic. You only need a blockchain if you need censorship resistance. And you only need censorship resistance if you're trying to break the law.
Wait, I don't know if I agree with that. Because you can have things that are censorship resistance within the law, but still don't allow. Like, for example, it's within the law to send money to people, but it's still better to not have banks have control of the money.
So what the thing with Bitcoin is that you don't need to KYC or identify yourself. Anybody can send money to anybody. And that's actually not, you cannot do that legally in the banking system. You cannot send money or have access to the banking system without identifying yourself. So that's technically outside the law. But what really happens is that all the e-money, centralized e-money like e-gold and Liberty Reserve implementations before Bitcoin, they were accused of money laundering by the government, and all their I believe their founders, went to jail and they were shut down, right? So the government wants a monopoly on who is allowed to participate in the financial system, because they don't want terrorists or drug dealers or whatever political dissidents, WikiLeaks, whatnot, to be part of it. So what Bitcoin allows is that it allows you to send money for drugs. It allows you to send money to people on terrorist watch lists. I'm assuming WikiLeaks is considered that type of entity, and that's why Bitcoin mainly has value. And also the other thing is that its censorship resistance reduces the ability of an entity to print more Bitcoin, which is probably the main reason why it has value now. So, and empirically this makes sense. So Ethereum, the only real use case that it did have was the whole ICO thing, right? And basically what the whole ICO thing was using censorship resistance in order to do an illegal security offering, right? So that is empirically the case. If you think of anything else, like, why do you need a decentralized, slow, expensive blockchain to do social media? Why do you need a decentralized, slow blockchain to do CryptoKitties? It doesn't.
Look, I'm willing.
Those aren't really things. So here's the thing. This is not theoretical.
Ethereum,
Everything is empirical. All right. So same. And I'll tell you this. So every other shitcoin. So then a lot of them, like EOS, whatever, they're all illegal security offerings. So they're using a blockchain to route around security laws. But I think really what all these shitcoins do is they allow people to day trade and gamble without having the deposit requirement. Was it $25,000 to day trade or whatever? So it's routing around all these laws that people don't like, so they can engage in day trading, gambling,
and we all hate gambling around here. That's for sure.
Well, no, I'm completely for it, but you have conservative regulators and whatnot trying to protect people from themselves, or they're trying to protect incumbents in Vegas or whatever. I'm not sure. I'm not too. My knowledge about the gambling industry is probably on the same level of your knowledge about cryptocurrency. So, yeah, I empathize with you. But yeah, basically, yeah, all these things all cryptocurrencies do is they're used to break the law. Allow money laundering, allow day trading, allow gambling, and that's why that's why people
Wait, I'm sorry,
people love it.
Are you saying that cryptocurrencies are only used to break the law?
Yes, that's the only legitimate use case. There's other things that they try to say is a use case, but that's mostly marketing. I'm just going off empirical evidence.
Well, I think that is almost certainly not true. Let's just think about businesses that are based around mining of Bitcoin. There's nothing illegal about mining Bitcoin, and there are massive businesses based around this. How is that breaking the law?
So Bitcoin they're processing transactions. They're processing transactions
But that's not illegal.
No, it is illegal to process transactions to people that the government doesn't want you to process transactions for.
Right, but it's not for the people that governments don't want. Like, if this was illegal, then the U.S. government would be shutting down mining companies.
The thing is that they're not shutting it down because they can't shut it down because it's decentralized.
No, but I mean the companies themselves. Right, there are companies that mine. I mean, like for example, Riot is one of them. I have some buddies that work there.
Oh yeah, no. Bitmain, Bitfury, Slushpool, yeah, they all mine. But yeah, the thing is that it's just impractical. How are you going to shut down a computer program?
Well, I'm saying these companies don't get shut down because they're not operating illegally. So I guess I don't understand why you're saying that they're operating illegally, because if they were, then the government would go after them.
No, they are, but then the government can't. It's impractical. So that's the beauty of Bitcoin, is that even if the government did want to try to shut them down, they can't. It's distributed.
They can't shut down the companies. You're saying they can't shut down Bitcoin. Obviously, they can't shut down Bitcoin.
Yeah, they can go after companies.
But then why aren't they doing that if they're operating illegally?
Because
I don't think
it's untenable. So Uber and Lyft broke the law. They didn't have taxi medallions, or they didn't have petition from the state, and they broke the law. And did the government shut down Uber or Lyft? No, because the people love it, right? At the end of the day, politicians are politicians, and they're beholden to the people. And if there's value here, then they're not going to shut it down. And probably a lot of politicians own Bitcoin, so they don't have an incentive to do it, because they'd be hurting their own net worth. So then that's the beauty of decentralization and censorship resistance. It's that it's distributed across the entire world, and it's literally impossible to try to shut it down. So the system, instead of attacking it, in order to survive, they just got to embrace it. Well, that's the beauty of decentralization.
So I just want to really go back to here, because I just could not disagree more on all uses here. Or I don't want to put words in your mouth, but your exact phrase was about how cryptocurrencies are used for illegal activity. But there are many businesses based around cryptocurrencies that certainly fall into the jurisdiction of not being illegal. Like, for example, I own a news site that I've built that talks about cryptocurrencies and puts articles out and helps people learn about crypto. That's not illegal, and that's completely based around cryptocurrency. So certainly there have to be businesses that are not operating.
I mean, there's sites that talk about drugs, illegal. There's content about illegal drugs out there. That's not illegal. Content is content. It's not illegal. I'm talking about the cryptocurrency protocols itself.
So why can't? So I don't think it's illegal to send someone money in the U.S. I don't think it is. Like, if I have $50,000 in cash, and I never said it was illegal. It's that cryptocurrencies allow you to send money to people that you're not supposed to send to. Well, but let's just say, for example, I want to give my good friend Kevin $50,000 in cash, right? Sure. I don't, by the way. But let's just say I did, and I had the cash. I can legally go and give it to you. I can give you the cash. That's a completely legal transaction. So I don't see why, just because that happens via Bitcoin, why that is now an illegal transaction, right? And it could be for a perfectly legal reason. Yeah. So my response would be, why would you use Bitcoin to send me $50,000 instead of a wire? Why would I use Bitcoin instead of a wire? Yeah. Because I have more Bitcoin than I have USD. This happens all the time. Yeah, no. So you would just do it legally. But it is legal to do it in Bitcoin. I'm legally sending you money. Yeah, but the thing is that then I'm talking about like comparative advantage. So why won't you just do it with the existing system that works, while using Bitcoin and risk losing if you send it to the wrong address? Right. Well, I'm not going to send it to the wrong address. Bitcoin is slower. Bitcoin is somewhat more expensive than the existing financial system, is because you have to pay the miners to process the transaction, and you have to pay the miners because they're taking on the risk of being attacked by the government for processing a transaction that they don't want. So the question is that here's the heuristic: if you can use the existing financial system to do a transaction, why don't you just use the existing financial system? Why would you use? Because I have my money. Because I have my money. I'm just talking conceptually, right? Just from like a product offering, right? If you can do it with an existing product offering, why would you use a slower, more expensive way to do it? Well, first off, I don't think Bitcoin is slower and more expensive. I think it is faster and less expensive. Actually, that is a good point. Second off,
That's right.
I don't know about you, but if you look at the results of USD over the last 100 years, not too good. I try to keep limited amounts of USD when I can because it's not exactly the best investment long term. So for a variety of reasons, Bitcoin can be a much better way for me to pay you money.
So maybe that $50,000 example is not good. So basically, I use Venmo all the time, or Cash App, or whatever. Just send my friends money back and forth. I don't use Bitcoin because Bitcoin is like, it's just slower. So it's slower and more expensive than Venmo, right? Use Venmo?
I don't use Venmo, but I don't see how that can possibly be true. Bitcoin is extremely fast right now.
No, Venmo is instant and free.
But Bitcoin is like, okay, so I don't know about Venmo. I've never used Venmo, so I don't know what the specs are. But I can tell you, Bitcoin transactions right now take minutes and are pennies. It's extremely cheap and extremely fast right now.
Yeah. So Venmo is instant and free. Bitcoin's not instant and free. So when I need to do a legal transaction, I need to send my roommate money for rent. I use Venmo because it's just head and shoulders better experience. If I wanted to send money to somebody on the OFAC list or to send money to pay for drugs, then I would use Bitcoin, because if Venmo finds out that you're using Venmo for drugs, then they're gonna shut down your account or also report you to the feds.
Do you think it's a bad look for cryptocurrency though, to try and make it seem like it's all about illegal activity when a lot of it is not about illegal activity? I think I saw a study on this recently that only a few percent of total transactions of the network are estimated to be about from illegal activity. Don't you think that gives it a bad look and then could incentivize governments to try and shut it down? I feel like we should be focused way more on the positive aspects, try and embrace it and get more of a mainstream acceptance of cryptocurrency, because in reality, only a few percentage of people that are using it are criminals, and letting that narrative tell the story, letting the Silk Road manipulate, like the way the Silk Road story was manipulated and the way that the government's trying to be like, oh, it's all criminals. I think that's not the story that we want to tell. We want to tell the story about a different money supply that is better than fiat, that has all these upsides and advantages, that's used by legitimate people for legitimate reasons, and embracing that message is the way that it's eventually going to succeed.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is a net positive, to where people are free from, meddling, manipulative, corrupt governments that inflate their currency or bail out crony, corrupt, incompetent banks. I guess the point that I was trying to make with saying that the only use case of blockchain and cryptocurrencies do illegal things is to call out all the scams and all the shitcoins that try to market a legitimate legal use case, when the main benefit of a blockchain is to route around government regulations and laws. So I wasn't trying to make a marketing point. I'm not trying to market.
I appreciate your position. I understand what you're trying to say, and there's no doubt about it that there's an aspect of it to where that's true, and it does. It does help people that would otherwise not be able to make transactions have a way to facilitate these transactions.
Here's the thing: illegal doesn't mean unethical. Maybe the law's unethical, and the reason why Bitcoin has value is because the government isn't representing the interests of the people. So, Uber and Lyft were illegal for a while, right? And was that really in the benefit and interest, or was it the benefit of the incumbents, the taxi incumbents that had to pay $100,000 for a medallion or whatever they had tried to?
I read an article on the medallion thing, by the way. It's really crazy what's happened to these cab drivers in New York, because essentially, like, in order to drive a taxi in New York, you have to have a medallion, and they cost a lot of money. They're very expensive. But so people saved up, they took out loans, and it was, for a lot of them, it was kind of like sort of like almost even buying a house. Like, the medallion was one of the most valuable things that you own. And then Uber came in, and the market for medallions, because there's a fixed number of medallions, when Uber is taking market share, the price of medallions dropped tremendously. A lot of people were upside down in these loans. So you have all these cab drivers who not only now have a decreased ability to find riders because of the direct competition, but also they're upside down in these medallion loans for a ton of money. It's pretty sad stuff, man. I mean, I'm not saying that like taxis are better than Uber. They're not. I mean, I've hated taxis for a long time. But what's happened to these people is also sort of sad when you think about it.
It's hard to feel sorry for them when they engaged in crony capitalism and lobbied whatever city.
Well, the
politicians
cab drivers didn't engage in crony
Oh yeah,
capitalism.
yeah.
I'm not
agree with-
talking.
yeah,
I'm talking
yeah.
about the cab drivers.
Yeah. I will agree that it is somewhat sad, but yeah, that's reality. That's the reality of disrupting regulations. That people that were kind of protected from that get hurt. But if you just think about net society gained from all the people that aren't dying from drunk driving accidents and the increased productivity of being able to get a ride instantly anywhere. So it's a net positive for society that these arbitrary barriers were broken down, and that's the same thing that's happening with Bitcoin. To the banking system, to where you need a banking license, which costs a lot of money, requires a lot of capital in order for you to spin up a bank. With Bitcoin crypto, if you can code, you can spin up an exchange, basically a bank, a wallet, a custodial service, like creating a website, right? So basically, it's going to enfranchise all these people. Like only maybe less than a billion, or just a small majority of the world is able to have advanced, reliable financial services. And imagine what the world's going to be like when you can switch off 7.5 billion people and allow them to engage in commerce and entrepreneurial activity, and to be able to store their wealth and not have to engage in like warfare and theft and stuff, because there's no incentive to build for the long term, because your government is just going to collapse or get taken over by some warlord, right? And with Bitcoin, you can separate yourself from that. And another thing that Bitcoin allowed me to realize this, and I think people can start realizing this as well, is that the accredited investor requirement is also similar to the taxi medallion, to where they limit the amount of people that can participate in investing in companies based off some arbitrary requirement, which is you have to have $250,000 in income or
we've talked about that.
Net worth.
We've talked about that here on the channel several times, by the way. I think that's ridiculous. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, but then here's the crazy part. What I'm seeing is that the venture capital industry is built on top of that regulation, that protectionism, right? So did you see that whole "look at me, I'm the ball" thing? Oh, so basically what's happening is that a bunch of Bitcoiners calling out VCs for investing in shitcoins or accredited investor tokens that compete with Bitcoin. And the reason why they're getting called out for that is that Bitcoin is supposed to be permissionless and is supposed to allow everybody to participate. So I wouldn't be where I am today if I had to be an accredited investor to invest in Bitcoin $80 in 2013. I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't invest in Ethereum at 30 cents or whatever in 2014, right? And then what happened after that is that we were encroaching on the game of the VCs. They're like, oh, we don't want you playing our game. You're not allowed here. And what happened was that they have a privilege to where all the deal flow has to go to them, and they can just sit back and just throw a slug of equity and get the cream of the crop. And also from that, they get proprietary information from all these startups, and they can look like prophets or gurus or people predicting the future and whatnot. And basically, what happened was that Bitcoin and crypto broke open that gate, or that barrier. And they had to compete with the rest of the world on investments. And there's a lot of smart people around the world that aren't rich, and they had to compete with that. And I think that's the reason why they don't like Bitcoin, is because they have no structural advantage. They have no regulatory arbitrage that they can use. Like the taxi medallion was that we had the government protecting us from competitors, and Bitcoin and crypto broke that open. And then what they started to do was that they tried to fit cryptocurrency into the accredited investor box, to where in order to invest in Filecoin or whatever, you had to be, or a block stack, you had to be an accredited investor. And I'm like, okay, you're closing yourself off to like the rest of the world. But then also at the same time, they were getting like sweet discounts on that, to where, we're accredited investor, you give us a nice discount, right? And then eventually we're gonna flip it, for a guaranteed profit on Coinbase or Binance or whatever when it flips. Then that's not fair at all.
So yeah, I mean, this stuff's all happening for sure. If you look at the amount
it's
of,
either a private, it's either a private market or a public market, right? You can't pick and choose.
right. Well, if you look at the way that deals have moved, and this is actually changing a little bit because we're in such a bear market right now. But if you look at the way the deals moved, most of these currencies, when they first started, when they were having an ICO, they were public. Anyone could send money and try and invest in it. Ethereum was like that.
Yeah.
And then it started to shift. It started to become more and more private, more and more pre-sale, more and more bonus, more and more discount, more and more the structure. And yeah, it started to shift over to VCs. But here's the thing: there is value in what VCs have to offer, because they can bring so much money and so many connections and the ability to help develop things and get the word out about things. And so there are strategic partnerships that do make sense, but it does force out the little guy, and that does kind of suck. That's one of the things that's always been great about cryptocurrency, at least in my view, as someone that's been around for a few years. It's always been great that people can get involved kind of at this ground level, whereas now it's like, oh yeah, you can buy it once it's publicly trading. Everyone else already got in at 20% below what you're going to buy it at. It's kind of ridiculous. But yeah, I think that there are other ways that VCs can get involved. And I think we see this, I think back to the gold rush, right? The people that made the most money were selling the shovels. There are plenty of VCs getting in on the exchange aspects, the mining aspects, all sorts of different aspects of not just creating the currencies themselves. So, this is why it's such a fun space, is that there are so many ways that you can get involved. If you have a good idea, you can try and succeed with that idea. But we are certainly going to see, and it's going to be like this in any industry that grows massively, we're going to see an increased amount of VCs that get involved with a variety of different tactics that they're going to try and do. And we're probably going to see some success from these guys because they have a lot of money and a lot of connections.
I'm sorry, I'm going to respectfully disagree. I don't think VCs add that much value to the space. I think they keep a lot of smart people out. I'll address your first point about why people start wrapping things in the accredited investor kind of structure. And it's because of censorship resistance again, is that these people were doing these offerings publicly, and they were using centralized companies or legal organizations that could get sued. They can go after the SEC. So basically what happened was that they were beholden to the laws. So they couldn't just launch it. So they had to play ball or play within the constructs of the accredited investor structure, and that made them beholden to the VCs. My argument is that if you want to launch a crypto, you do it anonymously and you don't use a legal organization. You just publish the code and people start mining.
Right, but that's for the creation of a currency that's going to be proof of work based with mining, and I don't think that everything is going to fit that build. I think that's going to change, because it's actually just like a practical argument. Like, I think if you look at the way the market's shifting right now, all the proof of work or the mining based coins are rising again, and all the ICOs or the pre-mined coins are falling. And here's again, like I'm not Vitalik. I'm not going to give you some highfalutin answer. If something can just be printed out of thin air, if code just be copy and pasted, how valuable is that thing? Whereas if you have to burn a bunch of energy and waste a bunch of money to make it, how valuable is that thing, right? So with mining, there's a cost that you have to expend. So you have to make sure that this thing is worth something in order to expend that cost. If you can it's basically just by Control-Ving or Control-C, Control-V, or just copy pasting code, you're basically printing money out of thin air, and you're engaging in inflation, which is what Bitcoin is meant to stop. So I'm going to disagree with you on that front. And I think at a meta level, regarding this whole VC versus Bitcoin debate, just like Uber and Lyft
broke the taxi medallion system and the whole regulatory capture and excluding, using the government to exclude competitors. Bitcoin is going to break all regulations and government censorship of economic activity and financial investing. Basically, everybody's going to be able to play now.
Well, so to be clear, I'm not saying that I love VCs. Oh man, let's bring.
Well, so here's the thing.
All I'm saying is that they will have some things that add to the space and give it value. Things like exchanges, things like.
But here's the thing: VCs will have to compete with everybody else. They're not going to have any special privilege. So.
Well, but they're VCs. They're going to have special privilege. They're going to have news outlets. They're going to have capital. They're going to have connections. I mean, this is what gives them those edges.
Here's the thing: is that if you're smart. If you have a good network, if you have a good reputation, if you have money, that's great. That is a competitive advantage. The advantage that you're not going to have is that just because you're rich, you don't have to compete with like some young upstart like me, right? So yeah, you can't just sit back and just watch the deal flow come in. You're going to have to compete with everybody else. And there are some smart VCs. Like I'm a fan of Peter Thiel, who's a Bitcoin maximalist. Chamath Palihapitiya, Social Capital. Also,
he plays
poker.
He plays poker too.
So yeah, there's a correlation between smart people and Bitcoin maximalists and VCs, and they don't like start funds for crypto. They just have it, as part of their diversified fund. I think Mike Maples, Matt Alco, like these are they're smart guys at VCs. Yeah, they're not a monolith. But I guess just what I'm telling to VC in Silicon Valley is that. You're going to have to learn to compete with the rest of the world. And there are young, hungry, upstarts in Africa, in Mexico, in Venezuela, and, the depressed parts of America that want to get in on your game. And you're going to have to, step up your game and don't double down on the system. So then, you see, Andreessen Horowitz using, their clout and Union Square Ventures to go, do a deal with the SEC to have a backdoor meeting. It's like, if I call up the, SEC and come in, are they going to, listen to me and approve the ETF? So basically, they're doubling down on the system to where they're trying to double down on that legal protection or that accredited investor requirement under the guise that they're trying to protect the public, when in reality, they're trying to protect themselves. So then my thing is that, the government or the people are legally allowed to buy like guaranteed negative expected value lotto tickets, but they're not allowed to, invest in, startups that change the world or have, potential to change the world and have, positive, expected value.
To be fair, the average return on investment from a startup is probably a lot lower than the average lotto ticket. Both are on average going to be negative EV.
Yeah, but one actually has an economic, benefit to, economic benefit to society. And I have another controversial view on
lottos are state run, by the way. They're generally speaking.
Yeah. So basically, they prey on poor people to raise taxes or just revenue, which is unethical. But I think I have two kind of contrarian, radical views on regulation.
Let's hear them.
Yeah. So first thing is that you can't baby people. You have to allow them to get hurt and learn. So I have this argument is there a regulation against touching rattlesnakes?
Not that I know of.
No, right? Because basically your mind through evolution intuits that when you hear a rattlesnake, you get the fuck away, right? You know why? Because everybody touched a rattlesnake fucking got obsoleted from the gene pool. And the gene that said don't touch the rattlesnake was passed on, and the gene that said touch the rattlesnake was not. And my argument is that you can't coddle people and protect them. You need to allow them to get hurt, which allows them to learn. So, I mean, in crypto, I got my ass handed to me a lot. I lost a lot of money in 2014, 2015. And I learned a really good lesson about, market psychology, time in the market, capital preservation, capital allocation strategy. And it's because I didn't want to feel that pain again. And if I was never afforded that opportunity, I wouldn't have been able to learn. And my thing is that there's a lot of things that people automatically know are scams. Nigerian print scams, multi-level marketing, timeshares, and all the other stuff. And basically, what happens is that, I guess there's a loophole and people are allowed to play. And then over a while, society just comes to a consensus that this is just an obvious scam. So my argument is that you should let everybody play and get hurt and learn. And my view is that all these tokens and ICOs and shit, because they were allowed to play, people are going to get hurt, and then society's going to come to a consensus that all of these things are scams. You don't need a regulation; it'll just be obvious.
Well,
So,
I think that even when things are scams or are clearly negative EV value, people still buy them. And when you say society comes to a consensus, I think most people. Okay, so the average person is not very intelligent, and a good example of this is lotto tickets. We all know you lose money with lotto tickets; they still sell tons. Why? Because people see that big upside. You're going to see this with anything, dude. BitConnect was huge.
Yeah. So maybe they're investing. Maybe they're investing in lotto tickets because they don't have any other opportunities to get upside, because they're not accredited. They don't have enough assets to be accredited, but so they're boxed in. So then to take the argument about touching the rattlesnakes is that almost everybody in society is fucking scared of rattlesnakes, right? So that means that humanity collectively wised up to it, right? So the thing is that by coddling and like infantiling human beings, you're not giving the opportunity to learn. You have to think about the big picture and the long term, which most people aren't willing to do.
It's a tough thing to balance, because I think on one hand you want to try and protect the poor and the vulnerable within a society, but on the other hand you don't want to force out people from opportunities that they can have. And so it's a tough game. I tend to be pretty much in favor of removing government regulation wherever possible that doesn't take advantage of people. And so I would like to see, I think, less regulation on that front, but I understand the people that want to protect. So I at least understand that position.
Yeah, but what happens is that's basically it starts out as a good intention, and then it gets captured by entrenched interests to say that, oh, we are protecting, taxi passengers, or we are protecting, public investors or whatnot. But what's in reality happening is they're protecting incumbents.
So let's talk about a couple other topics I had outlined here for today. So in 2015, you quit the banking industry. Could you talk a little bit about that and why you decided that you wanted to get away from it?
So I guess what I'm known for is shorting Wells Fargo, and then starting a public campaign, a viral social media campaign to get the CEO removed and have his bonus called back. And basically what I did was I worked at Wells Fargo, and I knew the problem was systemic, and I saw him lie in front of Congress saying that it was a contained situation, a couple of bad apples, and went on Jim Cramer, and he lied. And basically I just saw 2009 happening again. I was like, nah, fuck that. Like this is happening again. And I incentivized myself. I was a big fan of The Big Short to take action, and I shorted the stock. I live near San Francisco, and I stood in front with a sign. And the thing is that, like, I know how business works. I know how banks work. I know how finance works. I'm not those Occupy Wall Street people or basic children that just literally like sit down and kick and scream like a child. That's what they did for Occupy Wall Street. They literally sat down and kicked and screamed like kids. That's literally what they were doing. And my thing was like, yeah, that's not effective at all. And I was like, I know what banks work, how banks work. The executive is accountable for the purpose of the company, and you can hold them accountable. They are ultimately beholden to the share price. So basically, it was just simple logic: is that if we want a bank executive to be held accountable, you have to affect the share price. The easiest way to share price is just to move your business. They told everybody to close their account, And I did an open letter, talking about my experience at Wells Fargo and how we should all close our account unless the CEO wasn't removed and have his bonus clawed back. And it went viral, got 52,000 shares. And Laura Shin did a story on me. I was on Forbes, I was on New York Times, I was on CNN.
That's sick, man.
Yeah, and basically, that's the lesson I learned, is that there is upside to saying true things other people aren't willing to say if you incentivize yourself financially. Otherwise, you're just making yourself vulnerable. And that's also kind of what Bitcoin is. That Bitcoin kind of stands for like truth and like stamping out corruption. So by holding Bitcoin and calling out all the crony stuff and all the shady dealings, you are actually enriching yourself by telling the truth.
It's a dangerous line though when you start making things about enriching yourself solely. Because that's how Wall Street acts too. They're all about what it takes to enrich themselves.
So this comes down to philosophy. The master morality or the slave morality is that should the good and hardworking and honest and truthful people be rewarded by society? I think the answer is yes. Or should there be some type of, honor or value in being poor and weak and meek, right? So my thing is that is the missing link, that we didn't have a financial system that rewarded being honest and being truthful. And you could say The Big Short was an example of that. They knew exactly what was going on. They knew what the truth was, and they became billionaires because they realized it. And that's what you want. You want people to make money for telling the truth or discovering the truth. So yeah, that's kind of, and it also was a kind of very anarchic type of permissionless, decentralized movement, to where I didn't start like a nonprofit. I didn't start a corporation. I didn't start a hedge fund to do this. I just did it by myself, and I just used social media, and I had a bunch of people join in on it. It's kind of like, kind of like how Bitcoin's working. So I think that's why I get Bitcoin. So yeah, that's my background in banking. And then, from there, I, went to college, got a degree in finance, worked in banking in Silicon Valley, banking, venture capital, portfolio companies. So that's where I have like the unique insight. And basically, I think industry is that there's not a lot of diligence. It's like, when Andreessen or Sequoia is in the deal, you're like, shut up and take my money. And that's exactly what's happening in crypto, to where nobody's doing their diligence, and they're just worshiping, Mark Andreessen and Fred Wilson and like whatever they say is, or Naval Ravikant, and just like, oh, they're in the deal, I'm in the deal, or whatever, and they're not even like questioning, the merits or the feasibility of their investment. And that's also why like companies like Coinbase are constantly fucking up, right? So they were kind of the poster child for that. Is I was there on the ground floor where no Bitcoin company could get a bank account. Because they're too risky. There's a bunch of crazy libertarians are all breaking the law, right? So basically, as a banker, in order to move money, you need like 50 licenses across the state, money service business licenses, incredibly difficult. And basically, what happened was that a lot of early exchanges and wallets didn't get banking because they were just too risky. And then Coinbase came along, and there's two guys that kind of are all buttoned up and fit the bill. Former Goldman Sachs guy, former Airbnb unicorn engineer, and they kind of fit the part. And then Andreessen, I guess Andreessen used to say, oh, these guys are investable, right? They got all the equity for Andreessen. They got Andreessen and Union Square on the cap table, and the doors open like, oh, and everybody was, and they had a lot of capital to get all the licenses and whatnot. But if you look at everything that they've done, from supporting all these big block initiatives like Bitcoin Unlimited, B2X, and Brian Armstrong riding putting Coinbase's future on Ethereum, and the whole Bitcoin Cash insider trading scandal, them focusing on like Toshi and like crypto kitties, and like I don't think they're like anything impressive. I just think that they just have a good reputation because of their VCs, and they have a lot of money to do compliance and shit.
Which is necessary for that, though. And if you don't have the money, you're not going to succeed.
Yeah, but the thing is that what would you rather have? Would you rather have the top people in crypto and Bitcoin be the smartest and like the best engineers, or the people that were just able to look the part and put on the suit and raise the most amount of money? So yeah, I'm not like I'm not impressed with anybody at Coinbase, and you kind of see like them buying earn.com and that thing kind of like pivoting and raising like hundreds of millions and just becoming just an email app or whatever. And it's just that like these guys are just treated like as royalty, and they're just like untouchable. Nobody questions what they do, but the actual things that they create isn't impressive at all. And I think what's happening in Silicon Valley, I just tweeted this earlier. I think a lot of people in Silicon Valley, they were backing Ethereum because it's like a developer platform or whatever, and they're basically using these Silicon Valley mental models in a completely different industry. And yeah, they're reasoning by analogy. Then they're not thinking from first principles, and they're just kind of copying each other.
It is a platform, though. It's not a platform. It is a platform. That's what it is, right?
Yeah, well, that's the market. It's not a very good platform in my eyes, but basically it resembles other Silicon Valley investments. That's why the VCs love it. And also it allows them to invest in like all these other tokens and stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is that people just basically don't do their own due diligence, and they just rely on the judgment of these VCs, who turns out that they're not that much smarter than anybody else. They just have a lot of money, and they just have a lot of privileged access to deal flow. And I think Bitcoin is calling that out, because there's a lot of people that are not from that industry that are running circles around them in this industry. So like Coinbase is just a good fiat on ramp, and they're good at security, I guess. My thing is that they're probably best at regulatory capture and playing ball with the state. They constantly talk about, oh, we are so compliant, we are so compliant, we're so compliant. I'm like, that's the reason Bitcoin is trying to break that system, and you're trying to double down on it. I mean, I'm a big fan of Cody Wilson, or the CEO of Kraken, who actually fucking like takes a stand and says like, no, New York, fuck off. Like, we're not going to deal with like your arbitrary bullshit. And he took a stand. And also like, we shouldn't normalize the fact that whenever the government asks for data, you just hand it over, right? You should, especially, with Silicon Valley, everybody's like, up in arms about privacy. I was like, why doesn't everybody think about that regarding your personal finances? We should have, a right to privacy within our financial affairs. But we just have this thing to where like, no, so the government says it, we just hand it over. And Jesse Powell, when AG Schneiderman, the New York AG, did this draconian thing requesting information from these exchanges. And also, Kraken doesn't even operate in New York, and they were asking for information from them, and he basically said like, fuck off. And Coinbase actually promoted or celebrated the fact that we are being compliant. And you know what happened after? AG Schneiderman was accused of beating and slapping up women. A guy that said, he's like, it's something out of like an Ayn Rand novel. It's like, well, yeah, because you're a power, you're on a power trip, and you're used to getting things, your own way. And you could say that, that is tangential. That's a personal thing. But also, I think it's just, the mindset of these politicians, so that they're just drunk on power, and they could just like arbitrarily do. And you're like, no, like you gotta take a stand. It's like, no, like, I'm gonna stand my ground and fuck off. Same thing with Cody Wilson, right? He's not breaking the law, and there's these people that arbitrarily want to shut him down, and he is spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars to just fight for just to defend his position that he's not doing anything illegal. And I think that what people don't understand is that they just suffer from Stockholm syndrome, And they're like, well, it's the NSA, it's the CIA, and what can you do? It's a military-industrial complex. You got a lot of bombs, you got nukes and shit like that.
Yeah, I think I think people are good. I think at the end of the day, most people are good, and they want to just try and have like a fair-ish system to play in, and yeah, they're not willing to take a stand for things that are outside of their realm of what they understand.
Yeah,
But
it's mostly fear. It's mostly fear that they're scared.
Certainly
that the government is out of control and they can just call you a terrorist and just have their way with you. To where the fact of the matter is that I don't do anything wrong. I don't do anything illegal, so I'm not going to shut the fuck up. And also,
well, you own Bitcoin, right? And if you got those Bitcoins, what are you doing with them?
I just hold them. Yeah, because I don't do drugs. But the fact of the matter is that the government should fear its people. People shouldn't fear its government. And the fact that we are always, scared to speak up about, doing things that, are legal, like, downloading a CAD file of a gun, that just kind of shows you how bad the system is, to where everybody is in fear. And the reason why I guess I'm a lightning rod is that, after that whole Wells Fargo thing, going after the biggest bank, and I'm not dead, or maybe I'm already a dead man. Maybe it's just a matter of time. I'm messing with a lot of people's money right now.
I'm certain that you're not afraid, Kevin. I'm certain of that. Yeah. But we're running out of time here. Is there anything else you want to tell the people? Any general advice that you want to? Any last topic that you want to sum up here for everybody?
I guess the meta point that I'm trying to make right now is that Bitcoin is not disrupting the financial system. It's disrupting the government system. The existing nature of the state is being disrupted. Their ability to enforce arbitrary regulations against economic activity is being destroyed by Bitcoin right now. And you cannot arbitrarily disenfranchise people that you don't like politically. So everybody's gonna have a say, and you can fund whoever you want. And the only way that you can hold people accountable is to be honest and call out bad actors, and like a tribe, socially shame people. And that's going to be the new governance system. I'm a regulator. I'm a free market regulator. I don't use guns or the threat of jail to regulate. I just call people out and show that they don't do what they say, they're untrustworthy, and then people will make the decision if they want to do business with them or not. But I think what the future is that the power of the state is going to be reduced tremendously. A lot of large states will probably be not as powerful, and a lot of Bitcoin is going to enable a lot of local jurisdictions to where people can self-govern. And it's going to, you think that there's a lot of diversity in companies and corporations and startups. Imagine that level of innovation and diversity and numbers in the form of different types of startup governments.
Well, I'm looking forward to the day where we see that start to take place. Anyway, Kevin, I just want to say it's great to have you on today, man. You got a lot of different things you want to talk about. I think it was great to get your perspective today.
Yeah, appreciate it. I'm sorry if I came off a little bit harsh on you,
but no, I'm not a sensitive guy, man. You're not gonna make me feel bad here.
yeah, but the fact of the matter is that we're resetting the financial system, and the precedents that we set are going to have ramifications for the future. And it's not a game, it's not a joke, and you got to take these things seriously.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today, Kevin. It was great to have you on. For all of you guys, I want to say thanks for tuning into the podcast today. Certainly an entertaining one. We're going to be back on Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific time with Ari Paul will be joining the podcast. Should be a fun one too. Thank you, everyone. Kevin, appreciate you coming on, man.
All right, later.
Peace.